there's this juxtaposition in our lives as Christians where one moment we are on the mountaintop rejoicing, praising God, and then the next moment we're in the valley of despair. And then through the scriptures we see men and women of God caught in this tension, the high point to the low point. My mind goes to Peter. Jesus says, who do people say that I am? The disciples gave one opinion and another, and then Jesus says, well, who do you say that I am? Peter speaks up. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He's saying this with confidence. He's saying this with such energy and faith. Jesus says to him, Peter, you have answered correctly. You did not get this from human beings. This is revelation from heaven. And Jesus blesses him. Jesus blesses him in the moment. I can just feel, and I'm sure you can feel, how Peter must have felt at this affirmation from Jesus. Then Jesus begins to talk about death and burial and all of those things. Peter pulls Jesus aside and begins to tell Jesus, no, that can't happen to you. It's not possible that this is going to happen to you. And Jesus, you feel Jesus lashing out at him, as it were. Get thee behind me, Satan. Oh, in one moment, it seems, Peter is speaking revelation from heaven. In the next moment, Peter is speaking things from the demonic realm. How do we understand this? How do we figure this? It seems to me that a part of what we have to be guarded against as believers is how our victories sometimes causes us to drop our guard. How sometimes our spiritual successes brings us to a place of vulnerability. Because the truth is, we tend to drop our guards after a victory. The truth is, we tend to become vulnerable as well when we have just done some great exploit and our energy is expended. So how do we guard ourselves? It reminds me as well of perhaps the last sin recorded in the scriptures. It is that of John, the beloved disciple, whom after receiving that great revelation, he bows down to worship the angel who brought him the revelation. The angel pulls him up and said, don't do this, I'm just another servant. Idolatry. John, how do we deal with this part of our Christian living when our own vulnerabilities set us against God's purpose in our lives? Our own spiritual tiredness makes us do things that dishonor the Lord. I would like to suggest that it is important that we realize our own foibles. I think it's important for us to recognize that we can easily end up in these spaces. We need the grace of God. We need the humility to admit that this is easily a part of our lives. We need those who would help to confront us. Don't do this, I'm just a fellow servant. Or what you're doing is wrong. We also need to guard our hearts, because sometimes the place of victory can be the very place of defeat.